Coronavirus between fact and fiction. Now we all have a chance to judge for ourselves, because veteran American journalist Lawrence Wright has just written an exciting novel, to be released later this month, titled The End of October. The novel talks about a global pandemic and influenza-like illness that begins in the Far East, but is spread all over the world. This epidemic explodes in Saudi Arabia during the annual pilgrimage season, as there are about 3 million pilgrims in Mecca and they are closed. Does this look fantastic? Not so, when you remember that China recently put about 11 million people in Wuhan under closure, and similar measures were taken all over the world. Wright wrote recently, "The book is not a prophecy, but its appearance in the midst of the worst pandemic in living memory is no accident." He told me that the idea of the novel began as a movie script a decade ago, when director Ridley Scott asked him to write a script about the end of civilization. That work was never completed. But, he says, the story was always chasing him, and he decided to return to it as a novel. Inside Window. As a distinguished journalist and author of many very successful realistic books, Wright handled it just like any other journalistic mission, conducting detailed research and preparation. When I switched from expert to expert, Wright heard clear warnings of something like a coronavirus. The main question was not what if it happened but when, and, more importantly, many asked about the willingness of governments to deal with such an epidemic. The research in the novel provided an opportunity for me to dive deep enough to understand how such a crisis was going to happen, he says. The book was prepared in 2020. I had already created a calendar on my computer, showing where my hero was and how the disease was progressing. Much of his research was eerily insightful. He says, "I saw that as alarm. But of course, by the time the book appears, it becomes more like the diaries of the English writer, Daniel Foy, about the year of the plague. Depicting the events that you can read in the newspaper every day, and often seems to me consistent with events in my calendar." Wright's use of a novel to present his argument or point of view is just part of a growing trend. In recent years, a number of other authors, eager to deal with major challenges that may threaten our way of life, have turned their backs on discrete nonfiction or semi-academic books and tried the thrill formula on their own. Robots March. P.W. Singer, who works at the New America Research Center, is a leading expert on how new technology affects our lives, especially in the military and security fields. He quickly became seasoned with this kind of literature. In 2015, he and co-author Auguste Cole co-wrote a novel called The Ghost Fleet, which talks about the near future and post-communist China portrayed a technologically advanced military offensive against the United States in the Pacific. Their new book, to be released next May, is called Burn In, and describes itself on the cover as a novel of the real robot revolution.